talk about, as he rightly said, when to walk out of a transaction, right? So you are negotiating for something, and of course, yes, you have alternatives, and there are time spent on it. But everybody have different way to decide. This is the time you should be walking out of the negotiation, right? And you should not be in that negotiation. And my style is something like this. I give time for the negotiation, and if the negotiation is not progressing the way what I want, and you have exhausted the time what I budgeted for it, I call it that this is no more mine, right? And that has worked well for me, right? And where I see time spent on negotiation as a resource, and that cannot be endless for a negotiation. So how do you decide? Sometimes what happened, we have seen people walking out when they find an irrational claim from the other side, right? So what is your a point at which you walk away from a negotiation?
I think it's, see, and again, I can talk more about the people aspect because that's what I do for a living most of the time. And most times, at now, we deal with people who are fairly seasoned, they know what they're worth, whether it's compensation, title, flexibilities, whatever you talk about. But I think how I play it out is, most of the times I lay very, very, very honestly, okay, this is what we have for you, because this is where the rest of the leaders or rest of the people who are going to, because somebody who's coming in a fairly senior role would see it the day he walks into the organization in a week's time, like you discovered in 3 days that you were the most underpaid. Even a leader comes in, they know. So whether it's comp, whether it's the scope of work, whether it is, and I think for leaders, what I realize is more important sometimes in comp is, okay, am I having the autonomy and the authority what was told to me when I was discussing the role, or there is someone everywhere. So if I'm laying out everything as much as possible in all transparency, and the person is not seeing that value, and I get a sense that, okay, there is still a bit of somewhere the trust is not building up, then I leave it. And I leave it not because I want to walk away, because I think probably if I realize that, okay, I've done enough and I can't explain the same thing over and over and again, and there is something which is holding back, so I walk away, but I keep the door open. So I say, okay, you go back, you think, if you ever think that this is something that you want to discuss again, I'll be more than happy you have my number. What I always believe is, I say, okay, you can ask me as many questions, as many number of times, I don't mind that. Because the day you walk into the company, there should not be a question mark, did I take the right decision? And that's very important, especially for people who are fairly seasoned in the career, to be convinced about the decision that they're coming in. And that's my job to kind of make sure. But I walk away if let's say, despite all the efforts, I'm not seeing that trust thing coming in, if they have a doubt every time, I walk away. Because the first attempt has always been to lay out very transparently what it is.
For me, I would say is that, right, usually all this negotiation or this is a give and take relationships, right? When I look at somebody, when it starts behaving that I'm doing a favor to you or I'm being like superior and coming to this, that's the place most often I walk away from that negotiation. Yeah.
I can never make a deal with you, looks like.
No, I'm with you 100%, because for me, the only reason I'll walk away is the reason of equality and respect. If however large company you are, however money you're putting on the table, but if you're not giving a status of equality, that is a no-go for me. I'm out of the deal. So I'm very clear. That is my very simple one rule principle, is a matter of equality. I'm ready to leave any money on the table.
If there is a breakage of trust, like a reversal on some point, right? Or if let's say the other party is trying to dishonesty or like manipulativeness, right? They are bouncing on 2-3 ideas and then kind of dangling something and taking it back to see your reaction, right? Those kind of things usually break trust. Otherwise, I would go what you mentioned, the point about patience, right? I think my style is I would not probably give it a time, right? I would put an urgency on both sides, but yeah, I usually believe the patient one wins.
I look definitely for a long-term one, because rather renegotiating, you better do not for the short-term benefits, you look for a long-term. Many of those, it works in many of the cases agreement. It was always better.
Okay. So, we rightly said that when you are walking away from a deal, right, not able to close a negotiation, you should leave it open so that you will get some opportunity to negotiate further, right? Maybe next cycle or next event, next instant, and so on. Sometimes what happened, we negotiate, and we might succeed in negotiating with the external party with whom you are negotiating, but it might require you to negotiate the same thing internally also, right? So you might succeed externally, you might fail internally. Sometimes you succeed internally, you fail externally, right? But whatever may be the reason, sometimes you fail in negotiation, and you couldn't close the negotiation, but you could see the same party negotiating with someone else, succeeding on that, and visibly seeing a huge outcome in front of you, what you couldn't conclude. Did you had that such experience? I had such experiences, quite few of them, where we negotiated, we built the idea, we created everything, but we couldn't close. But the other side went and implemented that with a successful negotiation elsewhere, and it grew up as a huge, and at some point of time that became a challenge for us.
I think, so I work with the Big Four, and oftentimes internal challenges are as hard, if not more hard, than the external negotiation challenges, right? So yeah, I face that all the time. It's hard, probably sometimes because of whatever regulatory reasons, compliance, independence, etc. It's more difficult to sell something internally than externally.
Maybe the expectation differed. You should have known the expectation before even going out and negotiating externally. So that happened with, I was like going for a real estate space. I like do that best, and I thought, I've done that. But then when I went back and presented, they said, no, this was not our expectation. It was much less. I said, so what we did? We again renegotiated. We came to a common point, but then the time was lost. We couldn't get that part also.
It was never a challenge.
Yeah. So it's also, is it a promoter-led, startup, founder-led, which like I am now, or you are in a large conglomerate? They're like the country, and there is a region, and there is a global, and within that global there are verticals. Of course, it's going to take eternity to bring everybody home. So yeah.